How's it going? Welcome back to a very special video today. I cannot believe it. Today is a historic moment, I would say, for gamers across the land and for RPG lovers, okay? This is literally insane, okay? I'm trying not to shit my pants, okay? That's the goal of this video. But today I'm going to be talking about the Oblivion Remaster, the Oblivion Remastered Edition, and today I'm going to be giving you my early Oblivion Remastered review, talk about all of the main changes. I recently just talked about the OG Oblivion game, did a retrospective on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
And discuss what the game's going to look like and how it's going to feel, and see what crazy ideas Ray has come up with this week.
16 times the detail.
Yes, I was in the chess club.
So check it out if you haven't already to see how they stack up. I also talked about the Oblivion Remake in that video, but this is absolutely insane. So last night, I'm in Japan by the way, so the timing is a little bit different, but I did a midnight release live stream of the Oblivion Remaster, and it was crazy, okay, because it's so cool. Let me just say that, to have the gaming community all come together for once, not, have little, wars in the comments, not have people, just like be tribal and, like dog on someone for simply having an opinion, but just seeing people excited, just seeing fans of RPGs, fans of old Bethesda games come together, for this like historic moment in video games. And also it's gonna change the industry. I believe that this release really will change how games get marketed in the future. The whole remastered release is a fascinating discussion, just on its own, but today we are going to talk about the gameplay. We're going to talk about the Oblivion Remastered gameplay, and this is, crazy, okay? This is much more than I expected. Now, I did say that this was going to be mostly a graphical remaster, a remake of the assets and graphics.
I want more. And I know I shouldn't.
I am kind of disappointed they didn't add more foliage, more detail, just made it more like lively. They literally did just go and, kind of recreate new assets to make them look a lot nicer. They have, of course, added detail, certain cluttered items and stuff around the map, but it does still feel like an old game when you're out exploring in the wilderness. But when you're in like the dungeons or the cities, it's incredible, okay? I mean, this, it's literally a shadow-dropped Oblivion with ray tracing. Like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of dimension are we living in right now? It's just crazy. I grew up on Bethesda games, I've got to be honest. Like, my first proper big open-world RPG game was Fallout 3. I absolutely loved that game with a passion. It got me so heavily invested in the Fallout universe and the lore. I would say I'm much more of a Fallout fan than I am Elder Scrolls, but I still love it because of Skyrim, of course. And then I went back and I played Oblivion because Skyrim came out like when I was 15 or something like that, 16 or something, so I had to go back. But this is so exciting for me and for many of you out there, the wise ones watching. Old school fans are of course happy because this is, the perfect opportunity to go back and play a game that you grew up with, that you love. But for new people, for people who never truly experienced Oblivion, fully, who never played all of the DLCs like I did, this is crazy because we basically get a brand new Elder Scrolls video game.
Only one challenge remains. Go, Cloud District born. Go and defeat the peasants of Skyrim.
Yes, vintage.
But I do hope you're enjoying this review and you give the video a like, and I have something special to tell you. A little gift back to the Wise One community, something that I hope a lot of you might be interested in, because if you want to play Oblivion, but you're kind of shocked at the price since it's an old game, but it's just a remake and it's basically being sold at full price right now. Well, luckily you can get it for a huge discount by using my link on Instant Gaming. Now I've got a huge gift to give you, the wise ones of this channel, for subscribing, supporting me, building up this community. Just grab this game by using my Instant Gaming link, because you will already get a huge discount at 20% off. That's what's great about Instant Gaming. Basically, any new game that releases, even if it's shadow dropped, you can get it day one with a huge discount, because Instant Gaming always has discounts on all of their games, older games, newer games releasing. You can get the standard edition or the deluxe edition, which adds even more crazy stuff with the Oblivion Remake. I would highly recommend the deluxe edition because it does add a lot to the experience, and like I said, this is a special time in gaming history. But thanks to Instant Gaming, you can already get it at a huge discount. But if you want to be a little bit more of a wise one, okay, and you want, even deeper sales, okay, what I would recommend, okay, because I am trying to help you guys out, this isn't just for my benefit, this is, something that can help both of us and the community grow together. But I recommend that you maybe get Game Pass, okay, because if you get Game Pass right now, which also comes on like a, huge discount, thanks to Instant Gaming, basically you can play Oblivion on Game Pass, because Oblivion Remastered is out on Game Pass, so you can do it either way. If you want the game and you want to own it forever, which I would recommend, get it. But if you just want to try it out, then try it out on Game Pass. And luckily, Instant Gaming, what's so good about this site is it's not like other, resellers. This isn't a grey marketplace. They get them directly from the, trusted reseller source. They get them from trusted resellers, so what you pay for, you always get. You never have to worry about, it not working. The Trustpilot score just highlights that. You get all of these new games releasing on huge discounts, brand new games, like the Oblivion Remastered, GTA, Assassin's Creed, all with huge discounts, and Mandragora, which is a Dark Souls game I talked about recently. You get them all with a huge discount day one. You can take part in the community by leaving reviews, and you can find any game you want by just going down to the different categories. Instant Gaming basically has all of your gaming needs covered in one single place, and yeah, it's just great for the Wise One community. So be a wise one, use my link, and save some money. Now back to the video.
These are the closing days of the Third Era, and the final hours of my life.
So if you're new to the channel, make sure you go down below and subscribe, become a wise one today, because this is absolutely insane. And I'm going to be, talking about this game, but also just a bunch of other, games as well. So stay tuned if you like early access reviews and you like deep video essays on older games, philosophical content around gaming and life in general. Subscribe, become a wise one, think for yourself, and let's break out of the tribal mentality. And keep it all positive, because it's very refreshing just to see like the gaming community come together. This is exactly what I want. This is what YouTube should be about. Okay, so I'm basically going to make this a quick early review. I'm not going to go deep into a whole video essay on it today. That might come out at some point, but I just want to, kind of talk about my first kind of impressions of the Oblivion Remake and the Oblivion Remastered gameplay, and just give you a quick Oblivion Remastered review. Basically, what really stood out to me, not just the graphics of course, but the lighting overhaul in this game is truly something special, especially if you are playing on PC. I'm not sure if consoles have ray tracing enabled on it, but it is pretty crazy stuff on the PC. Because this is Unreal Engine, you will have to remember that stutters are going to be a thing, and it sucks, and I really hope they patch that out, because at the moment I've seen a few stutters and stuff, and others have talked about it as well. But just the lighting, the textures, it just looks fantastic. Now I want to discuss something that's quite different in the Oblivion Remastered compared to the original, and that is the movement, okay? The movement has been completely overhauled. There are new animations. They're not just using the same animations, which is a really good thing. So the animations have been completely redone for the most part, which I really like. They are reusing some of them, but the animations do feel a lot better. There's sprinting now, but I've got to say that the sprinting animation in third person is the most like retarded thing I've ever seen. I've got to be honest, it looks so goddamn goofy, but when the rest of the game is so, you know, like lovingly remade, and you can tell that the developers behind this, you know, they played a lot of Oblivion, they were very passionate, and it actually shows. You know, that's what we want in gaming: passion, creativity, and a united, you know, creative vision. That's how you actually make a good game. Of course, it's got the blueprint of all the Oblivion stuff, the original Oblivion stuff, but they've just modernized it to make it feel a lot better. But there are some, you know, jank in it. Of course, you can't really expect it not to be there, but I didn't think that the new additions would be janky themselves, but, well, it's Oblivion, so there you go. The sprinting animation is completely stupid in third person. Like, it looks like, you know, you're just spazzing out as you run, which is quite funny, to be honest. But in first person, it feels so goddamn fluid, okay? The dodging around, you can now dodge around. It feels a lot more fluid when you're just sprinting and attacking enemies at the same time. It's just very good, you know. It feels even more better than Skyrim, I would say. A lot more, not floaty, but just a lot more, you know, like freedom of movement, which I really like. Of course, archery has been redone as well, so it doesn't feel so stiff. It kind of replicates that Skyrim archery. I wouldn't say it's one-to-one, but it is a lot better. And of course, we have to talk about the combat itself, okay? So in the original Oblivion game, when you whacked an enemy, nothing would happen, you know. There would be no hit detection, nothing like that. They wouldn't react to the actual damage. Now, you know, there is a little bit of feedback. The animations are crazy, like with the goblins like yelling at you and stuff like that. Seeing the blood, you know, go off in different directions when you hit them, and just having them physically react to, you know, a weapon blow. Sadly, it doesn't feel super weighty. It still has that Oblivion floatiness to it, but it is still a hell of a lot better compared to the original. So I'm not going to go and critique this game because I haven't seen enough of it to critique yet, as it were, but there are a few nitpicks that I just want to draw attention to for old school fans, and some people might find this a little bit disappointing, okay? That is the dungeons themselves. Yes, they are, you know, kind of redesigned. There's more attention in the dungeons and stuff like that, but they haven't been massively overhauled. Like I said, this is a one-to-one remake, so don't expect huge variation in the dungeons, and that was kind of the problem with the original Oblivion, but it just looks a hell of a lot better, you know, and exploration is just a lot tighter thanks to better combat and all that stuff, and the lighting. But yeah, don't expect, you know, a massive overhaul in the dungeon system. There's not like added content really. There is all of the DLCs included, which is crazy and a big win, especially for people like me who haven't played the DLCs. You know, this is going to be like a fresh Elder Scrolls experience, which is crazy. But some things that they have changed, which, you know, some people might not like, they've kind of toned down some RPG elements. You might say that they've refined them or improved them, but some people might feel differently. For example, when you start out, basically, as you choose what kind of character you want to be. So for example, now when you first start the game, it's much more akin to something like Dark Souls or Skyrim, where you put virtue stats into intelligence, strength, and you know, luck and stuff like that, compared to the original Oblivion, you know, kind of leveling up system. And some might say that's a kind of more stripped down version of an RPG. I would push back and I would say that it's just you know, more modern approach to RPG leveling up. Maybe it gives you more flexibility, and some people might not like that because they want you to stick to a certain playstyle, but I think it's perfectly fine. They've also redone the whole UI system, so it feels a lot better to interact with, you know, like looting and the menus and stuff like that. Much better than Starfield, which is just crazy. And no one's talked about this, but I feel very bad for the Sky Oblivion team, and I think, you know, Bethesda did this on purpose. This is a very interesting thing, because I wouldn't say it's a remaster. I would say that this is an Oblivion remake, and they've done a lot here, enough that the majority of people will be playing this instead of Sky Oblivion. It's just how it is, and it's really just sad because you know, they worked really hard on it, and I'm sure the PC community will still support them, but it's nothing compared to like if they released this, you know, without being in the shadow of the Oblivion remake. So it's quite sad to see that, I've got to be honest. But you know, mod support mod support will be greater for Sky Oblivion, but it does look like modding will come into this Oblivion Remastered edition, which is crazy. So I don't know, we'll just have to see how that plays out. Now, if you're a true wise one and you watched my Oblivion 2025 review, looking back at the original game and comparing it to the remake, I think I called it quite fairly, and I said that this would mostly be a graphical remaster, a graphical, remake. And I was quite right about that, but one thing that I was worried about, and now, I'm just so happy about, what they did do is just 10 times better than what I imagined them doing, which is the facial animations, okay? Yes, they are still weird and very, Westworld, where you're talking to, something artificial is happening here, that's for sure. It doesn't feel quite natural. Unreal Engine also has this kind of smoothness to everything, and when you try and add wrinkles and stuff like that, it makes them look very... it doesn't make them look realistic. This isn't The Last of Us or, high graphical fidelity facial animations like in God of War or something like that. But it does look a hell of a lot better, that's for sure, compared to the original Oblivion game. But one thing that really, just took me by surprise is the lip syncing. Better than goddamn Starfield in many instances. It's crazy that Bethesda really worked hand in hand with, this kind of studio to rebuild Oblivion, and it just shows the passion because, the game world doesn't, continue to carry on. It still does the classic Oblivion zoom in, but the facial animations are so much better compared to previous Bethesda games, and the lip syncing is a hell of a lot better. And a crazy thing that they've done is they've actually added new voice lines. There's new voice lines in this, totally new actors. That was a problem which I called attention to, some of the actual, oopsies would be in the original Oblivion game when the actors messed up, and they would all sound the same because it was a much smaller team back then. But this time, there's actually tons of different actors, tons of different voices, so it feels way more fleshed out and much more, just like a real world, a new Elder Scrolls, which is crazy. And something I also want to touch on is the soundtrack, okay? The soundtrack is so important to Skyrim, to Oblivion, to Bethesda games in general, and I'm so glad that they kept the original soundtrack in the game. I know there's allegations with the composer, Jeremy Soule, but I just think it's ridiculous, okay? I really hate this idea of cancel culture in general, and as someone who makes music myself, it's just so disgusting when he's brought so much peace and tranquility to, gamers around the world. I always listen to the Skyrim soundtrack and the Oblivion soundtrack, and the fact that he's basically being cancelled on allegations alone, that's just what this modern world does now. I'm not condoning his actions, but I can't verify that what he did actually happened. But it's just sad that, we're gonna lose him for Elder Scrolls 6, to be honest. But it is here in Oblivion, and it does make a huge difference. Another positive for the Oblivion Remastered review that I really want to draw attention to is the attention to detail that they've added in this game is crazy, okay? Not just the new textures for all the classic armors that we, all imagined in our heads when we were, growing up playing this game, the UI overhaul, all of this kind of stuff that they've added to make this game feel a lot better, but just the fact of the attention to detail. So for example, when you're out in a snowy environment, snow will actually stick to your armor. You will actually get, snow covered on you. When you get wet, it will represent that. It just feels a lot more immersive. The lighting, especially with ray tracing, it does add a lot to this game, especially in dungeons. It's crazy just how much they've improved this game. They haven't fixed all of the bugs. There are still, bugs in this game from the old game, but they have, improved with some things like collision and stuff like that. So overall, it's a much more refined experience, and the attention to detail makes it feel like a modern game in many ways. Like you're playing an older game, yes, of course, it still feels old, but it has that, a modern coat to it, where it's the best of both worlds, because in my personal opinion, games were better in the olden days. It's not that old, but, games were better before they became this giant AAA, money-grabbing industry, and it was more about creativity. And I think having an old game like this shine through with modern technology is the best of both worlds. The only thing that I wish they added was better AI, because the NPCs still act so dumb and so stupid. The Radiant AI that Todd Howard always boasted about is still very much in Oblivion, which is great for meme which is great for the meme factor, but it does take you out with the immersion and stuff like that. But for people who want the core Oblivion intact, luckily it is still all here. But just the attention, man, to detail, it's crazy. Like, the sound design is so much better, like actual, 3D audio. It feels like when NPCs are talking, they actually sound distant depending on where you are, like what you're standing on and stuff like that. I mean, this is crazy stuff, man. This is just like, this is what the gaming community needed. This is what we needed to, kind of unite us in why we love video games, why this media is so special, why it's a transformative art. It's not just like reading a book, watching a movie. You're taking part in something, like in a different dimension or universe. That's what's special about gaming, and I'm just so pumped and happy that this Oblivion remake basically blew expectations out of the water. I was trying to go in with, kind of more skeptical mindset and trying to be objective. That's why I didn't, build up too much hype or anything. It's much better to go into a game, or anything in life with, not expecting anything. The Stoics would call it, a preferred indifference. Going into all aspects of life with indifference, but this is definitely a preferred indifference because, I wasn't expecting much, but it blew, my little socks off. And what can I say? This is crazy. And this is exactly how we should interact with games going forward, I think. And it's just refreshing, and it's so cool that, everyone grew up on Elder Scrolls, and, we're all in this right now, experiencing this. So it's pretty crazy. I don't want to get all emotional about it, but it's pretty cool stuff. They have kept in the old stuff in Oblivion, like the lockpicking, the persuasion mechanics. None of that has changed. I would have liked to see a little bit more, just added mechanics to it to make it feel more fleshed out, added NPCs to make the world feel more alive. But I can't really complain. And I just wanted to give you a quick Oblivion Remastered review based on the early stuff. And yeah, this is crazy. And thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if you're new, and I'll be talking about this at some point in the future with a more detailed analytical video. Thank you so much for watching, my wise ones. I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.